quiet group tonight.
It is.
We're just so excited.
We'll find out if that's good or bad. All right, we got a couple of seconds here, and as soon as we get to 5:30, we'll go ahead and get started. Which I see that now, so we'll call the meeting to order at 5:30. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Madam Clerk, can we do a roll call?
Mayor Pileski.
Here.
Trustee Berkshire.
Here.
Trustee Della Penna. Noted as absent. Trustee Domke.
Here.
Trustee Lanisa.
Here.
Trustee Prokowski.
Here.
Trustee Trejo.
Here.
And you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as prepared?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I got Wayne as making that motion and Tom as making the second. Any debate? I assume not. So we'll move straight to a vote. I guess roll call. Sorry, because we're still virtual.
Yes. Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
And Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
And that motion carries. Thank you very much. Village board public comment. Due to the pandemic, we're continuing to meet virtually. And so we did have the opportunity for members of the public to submit their questions or comments in advance online, or they could have left a voicemail, or they can participate during the meeting to do such. First, I would like to check with the clerk. Did we have any submitted online or via voicemail?
Yes, we have 3 to be read. The first one came in from Leon Hina, and she says, congrats to all. Thank you to all our heroes. We're grateful for the job you all are doing. Keep up the good work for our Roselle. Thanks to the 9/11 team for saving lives. If we can have kids and family involved 1 month environment, they love to help and keep Roselle safe and clean. And whoever can come out to help, give them a certificate. Low income kids and elderly need help with eyeglasses that the Lions of Illinois give out free. Gift certificates would help them to get more eyeglasses. And then she left her email. So if we had any information for her, I guess we could contact her. Second submittal is from Gary Weber. And he asks, how long is the vacant Burger King at Lake Street and Rodenberg going to be there? It is an eyesore and should be leveled and grass planted like Schaumburg does with its deserted commercial properties.
Brian, sorry, before we move on to the next one, Brian, do you have anything that you could update Gary or the board on as far as that property in particular?
Yeah, so I did send an email out to Mr. Weber earlier this morning, but just to give the board kind of an update on the property. So staff has been more proactively engaged with the property owner, but have been talking with him directly for a little over a year now on potential uses that may work with the property. It's not dilapidated. We've been inside the building. We've seen it from a code perspective, from a fire code perspective. He's just having some trouble in marketing the property on his own, in which we've kind of stepped in to help him put it, more so on the forefront of our economic development program. So not currently, we have no prospects that have come and reached out to us directly in regards to potential uses for the property, but we're actively engaged with the owner in trying to get it back to being a better use than an eyesore. So.
Thank you, Brian. Sorry to interrupt you.
All right.
Patty.
All right. Item number 3 is from Jessica Walsh, and her comment is referencing item 9 on the agenda, the Lexington Homes items. She says, I'm writing to express my serious concerns about the proposed Lexington Homes development on Rodenberg near Travis. As a 16-year resident of Turnberry Manor in Roselle, I am deeply invested in our community and well-being of our residents. Below, I have organized my concerns by subject, although inevitably there will be some overlap. Number one, Rodenburg Road traffic and safety. Simply put, Rodenburg should not have any new development until it is repaired, widened, and made safer. I learned at the zoning meeting that this will not happen until 2023. The narrow lanes are already hazardous for pedestrians and bikers. The sight lines coming off of the railroad tracks are quite poor, and people very frequently go quite quickly over the crest. Turning left off of Travis to enter Schaumburg, and this is the only expedient route for anyone in Pembroke and Turnberry, is already extremely congested at rush hour. The traffic study was conducted during the pandemic and is not at all representative of how traffic will flow as people return to offices and to schools. Item number 2, pedestrian crossing. Related to the above, adding more pedestrian traffic in addition to vehicular traffic further imperils those who wish to cross Rodenburg Road at Travis. Many of my neighbors are families with small children and or elders who need more time at a crossing as is, let alone with more people and cars. If anyone at the proposed homes takes the Metro, this dangerous crossing will be their only option. Item 3, parking. As of the zoning commission meeting, Lexington had planned no visitor parking for their own residents. Indeed, when asked, the developer stated that they didn't anticipate problems because people who have lots of vehicle traffic would probably live in a lower income neighborhoods like Turnberry Manor, a statement that is both inaccurate and contains disturbing implications which are not difficult to decipher. Obviously, this is not an exact quote because I have not reviewed video of the meeting. While I suppose it is possible all 64 households will abstain from ever having gatherings that require guest parking, that seems unlikely. Guests will have to park in Turnberry Manor's visitor parking and then cross at the above-mentioned pedestrian walkway. Item number 4, water management. I claim no expertise in water management, but I have lived here long enough to know that Rodenburg has frequently been covered in water due to flooding. Adding both the Lexington development and the Experian development can only exacerbate this problem. Thank you for your time. I have no great hope that my voice will be heard over that of a wealthy developer, but I do believe in the community's potential and want to see the best for all who live here and our natural environment. And that's the conclusion of the third.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I just ask that staff incorporate some points to address those when we get to those items during the agenda. I do see we do have some people on the meeting, so I will ask if there is any member of the public that wishes to make a comment at this time. Please use the reactions at the bottom of your screen and raise your hand so you can be recognized to speak now. Seeing none, we'll move off of public comment and move to official and staff reports. So under my report, I just would like to thank everyone for providing their feedback. So I'm really happy to announce that we'll be returning to our in-person meetings for June. So mark your calendars for Monday, June 14th. We'll be back in the boardroom. So we'll be starting at 7 p.m. So you can grab dinner ahead of time or find some new ways to entertain yourself between working hours and village board meetings getting started. What I will ask is please review the memo that Jason provided via email regarding the policies that we're implementing at Village Hall, so that way everyone is up to speed and ready for that return. Also, you'll notice tonight we did make the adjustments to the agenda that we discussed 2 weeks ago. So we'll continue with the one meeting format going forward. So Committee of the Whole is now incorporated as new business items. These will be for discussion only. We've also added an additional public comment section to accommodate the opportunity for people to participate in different parts of the meeting based on what is being done. So this is something that, I think gets us 90% of the way there, but open to any feedback from the group as we work through this and adjust our operations to make sure that this is working in the best way for us. So with that being said, I'll move over to trustees reports. Does any trustee have a report today? All right, seeing none, we'll go to village clerk.
No report.
Village attorney.
Mr. Mayor, I have no report till we get to agenda item 9B, and I will have a significant report on section 4 of 9B. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Village Administrator.
Yeah, I just wanted to communicate to the board and to the community regarding the fireworks. Right now, we've identified Saturday, September 4th as the night for our rescheduled July 3rd fireworks with the rain date of Sunday, September 5th.
Wayne.
Just tell me why we're not doing the 3rd of July.
We are not doing the 3rd of July because the deadline to do that was in April. At the time that the village board discussed it, they were non-committal because we didn't know where the pandemic would be, and it wasn't until earlier in May that we kind of knew we were going down the road of phase 5. So unfortunately, that deadline has passed.
It's helpful that you said that.
Anything else?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, we'll have a fun Labor Day weekend, it sounds like. We'll move over to Treasurer's Report. So Tom, it's that special time of the year.
Thank you. And of course, the train goes by, so please bear with me. Good evening, everyone. Your packet tonight contains the Treasurer's Report for April, which represents 1/3 of the fiscal year. Revenues are at 24% of budget projections, but that is mainly due to the timing of the DuPage County property taxes, which we start to see in May and June. And we did get some deposits on Friday, so you'll see that number jump up. Most of the other revenues are coming in as we expected or better. Sales tax was 7% higher, income tax 20%, and local use tax 2% higher than April of 2020. Eating tax is up 5% for the year so far, and the amount received for March sales was the highest we've received since December of 2019. Video gaming tax received in April was for February gaming, which was the first full month since October of 2020. And this was the highest amount the village has ever received for gaming tax. Building permit activity is beginning to increase again. And although revenue is a little bit behind our budget expectations, the number of permits is exceeding the pace of 2020 so far. A lot of small project requests are coming through, which is the reason for the revenue lagging a bit. But that I did include a chart in the report on page 7 of the board packet. Expenditures are proceeding as expected. Salaries, the largest line item in the general fund, are lower than expected, mainly due to vacancies in community development, police operations, and streets. And overall, overtime is within expectations. And the report contains charts showing the FY 2021 sources of overtime in the police department. For those careful observers, I did include the chart twice. I did not include for some reason, I didn't include April. I duplicated that one, so I apologize for that. If anybody wants it, I will send it to them after the meeting. Well, the Water and Sewer Operating Fund continues to operate within budget. Water usage was up 2.4% from last year, mainly due to a large increase in commercial consumption. So we are seeing commercial consumption see a comeback. In both divisions, water and sewer are within budget levels. The remaining pages include the balance sheet and income statement of the general and water sewer operating funds, the village's investments as of April 30th, history of some select revenues, our largest revenues, and the income statements of all of the remaining funds. And I'm happy to answer any questions from the audience.
Any questions for Tom tonight?
No questions. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, seeing none, thank you so much. It's always nice when you have good news to share. We'll move over to unfinished business, and so we'll start off with the consent agenda. Again, all items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, or non-controversial in nature, and these will be enacted in one motion. There is no discussion of these items. Included on today's consent agenda: presentation and approval of the village board Minutes of May 10th, 2021. Approve the first partial payment for the 2021 water main replacement project Tomorrow Sewer Construction Incorporated in the amount of $333,013.14. Adopt a resolution authorizing the execution of a contract for the 2021 storm sewer improvement project with a Scanlon Excavation and Concrete Incorporated in the amount of $136,515, and pass an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2021 budget for the TIF number 2 Roselle Nergy Fund, TIF number 3 Irving Park Central Fund, and TIF number 4 East Irving Park Fund. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Trustee Trejo made the motion. Trustee Domke made the second. Any discussion? We'll move straight to roll call. Sorry.
Trustee Trejo,
Aye.
trustee Domke,
Aye.
trustee Lanisa,
Aye.
trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
and trustee Pukowski.
Aye.
And that motion passes. We'll move to community development. Trustee Berkshire.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think before I start making my motion, I think Karen, you had a few things you wanted to add before we move into the actual motion itself. And you're on mute, Karen.
Sorry, navigating amongst 3 screens is confusing. So I'll first address some of the comments made during the public comment. The stormwater issue specifically, a lot of that will be addressed as we reconstruct Rodenberg Road. Rodenberg Road currently doesn't have curb and gutter, and it will once we reconstruct it. We'll also be doing some storm sewer improvements and then regrading the area in general. So once construction of the road is completed, our goal is to not have water across the roadway for extended periods of time. For parking, Lexington has met all of the parking requirements within the village zoning ordinance. We do not require townhomes to provide visitor parking. They have 2 garage spaces and 2 driveway spaces for each unit, which is actually more than code. They're only required to provide, I believe, 2 spaces per unit. And then part of the approvals tonight includes a condition that we evaluate the pedestrian crossing at Rodenberg Road and Travis Parkway. That was a great point that the Ms. Walsh brought up during the public hearing, and that's something that we'll be reviewing as part of our Rodenberg Road reconstruction project.
Anything else?
I do know that someone from Hampton in the Park had was unable to speak during the public hearing, and they had some concerns about providing fencing along the entire length of Hampton in the Park to provide separation between that subdivision and the new townhomes. That's not required in our zoning ordinance. They've met all of our buffer and landscaping requirements for the new townhomes. So if a homeowner wanted to install a fence on their own, they would be able to.
And Karen, if you could you describe in more detail some of those buffer requirements that we provide?
Sure. So there are sort of like 2 alleys where units will be accessed via their garages that face the Hampton in the Park subdivision towards the south. The petitioner has provided a 6-foot privacy fence, basically the entire length, to block light from vehicles, and then both sides will be planted with sort of pine bushes and pine trees, sort of your evergreen that will provide light and noise buffer year round, in addition to some more beautiful kind of landscaping. So that meets all the requirements of our landscaping ordinance.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to pass an ordinance rezoning property and amending the Village of Roselle zoning map from R2 Single Family Residence District to R3 General Residence District.
Thank you, Trustee Berkshire. And do I have a second? Trustee Trejo? Thank you. Any discussion on this item? Yes, trustee Domke.
Could we hear anything from the Lexington Home folks that are on our meeting that might address some of these concerns from their viewpoint?
Hi, good evening. My name is Nate Weinsma with Lexington Homes. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We're happy to answer any questions you might have. We have here tonight with us our council, our landscape architect, our engineers, civil engineers. Also on the line are Michael Worthman is one of the calls on the line. He's with our traffic consultant. So we're all available if there's any specific questions you have to one of those areas. As it relates to some of the questions from the neighbors that have come up, I would just echo that our intent is that to not just put a fence along our property line between the Hampton and the park to the south of us and our development, but rather sections of fencing in order to block any light pollution. And our intent also was to hold that fence off of the property line to allow for, as Karen pointed out,
419.
Yeah, 349.
landscaping on both sides of the fence, on our side and at the Hampton and the park side. So by pulling it off the property line, we've got landscaping on both sides so that, again, it's not just a blank fence that anyone is looking at. The fence serves a purpose, but we also want to incorporate it into the landscaping so it looks a little more natural. We concur that, we look forward to the Rodenberg Road improvements that will happen. I think in the information that you've been provided, there's maybe some detail on the fee for the portion of the improvements that we'll be paying for. And that will include a bike path and improvements to Rodenberg Road. I concur that, I would like to see off-site from our property, but integral to the overall function of our development with the adjoining neighborhood. There is a crossing there of Rodenberg Road, and I think that crossing should be studied a little further, because we look forward to it being as functional as possible when Rodenberg Road is improved, because that is the most direct route to the train station from our development, and we think that will be a very well used pathway. If there's any other questions, I don't recall if there was anything specific that I may be missing, but happy to answer anything directly.
Trustee Burkowski, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, sorry, just a very quick question about the traffic study. One of the concerns the resident had brought up was about when the traffic study was performed. I was wondering if you could just give like a quick, 30, 60-second explanation of how you extrapolate that information out to make it more applicable to more normal times.
Michael Worthman with KLOA is on. Michael, if you could kind of give them an overview, and specifically, I know one of the questions raised was the level of traffic that may have been counted as it relates to the effects on traffic that COVID has had. So specifically, what kind of measures were taken to adjust for any COVID impact on our traffic study?
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Michael Worthman with KLOA. We conducted the traffic study for the proposed development. Just confirming, hold on one sec, the counts were done in October of 2020. What we do on all these studies during the pandemic is we review the previous counts conducted in the area. And what we found out is that traffic counts were about 40% lower in the morning and 15% lower in the afternoon or evening. As such, we increased the counts that we had uniformly by 40% in the morning and then 15% in the afternoon. In addition to the traffic that will be generated by the townhome development, we also included ambient growth in the area to provide additional growth that may be there from other developments in the area. Based on that, the roadway system has sufficient reserve capacity to accommodate the traffic generated by the development. The development will account for less than 1% of the traffic at the intersection with Irving Park Road, Rodenberg, and Irving Park, and less than 1% at Central and Rodenberg, excuse me. So overall, there's more than sufficient capacity to accommodate the limited traffic that will be generated by the townhome development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Domke.
So I do want to say Lexington Homes has a really great reputation. There's some real quality in their building, and I've had a few people that I know that have lived in their developments. So I think it's nice that they have come to Roselle. I do want to ask one question in front of everybody is like, what influence do we have with IDOT should there be a traffic surge? And can the traffic lights be reconfigured to what happens when you put in a development? Or is IDOT just tone deaf or any requests? How would we go about that if the traffic lights needed to be adjusted?
Karen or Kristen, do you want to approach that?
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to find the unmute. So, I mean, we certainly could work with both IDOT, and then we control the traffic signal at Central as well. I will say that typically their primary function is to make sure the traffic is flowing down the state route, but certainly we can have them look at turning signal movements if there becomes a need at some point as well. They have a
so it's not like we're stuck. If we put in a development, even at Metro 19, we can make a case for a change, at least in the timing of the turn signals, for instance. So that's good to know.
Yeah, they can always be looked at. They're going to obviously look at their system. The main flow of traffic is their system, but we always want to make sure that the side routes have ample time to get traffic out as well.
Right.
Any other questions? All right, then I'll ask that we go to a roll call. Madam Clerk?
Trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
trustee Trejo,
Aye.
trustee Domke,
Aye.
trustee Lanisa,
Aye.
and trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
And that motion carries. Before we go to 9B, I believe we want to have Attorney Knippen provide a report.
Thank you
What
very
I was
much.
planning on doing, yes.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you very much, Bruce. Specifically, turning your attention to Section 4 of Agenda Item 9B and subparagraph 1 of that section, which says determination of ownership and maintenance of Outlot E shall be made to the satisfaction of the village engineer prior to the issuance of any building permits for the development. Outlot E is a wetland. And as a consequence, that language it was originally formulated was probably based upon the belief of both developer and the village at that time that the county was going to take responsibility for this wetland. That has since proven to be either not accurate or not true. We just simply don't know at this point, but it seems unlikely that the county is going to take responsibility for the wetland. For those members of the board who have previous experience with wetlands, we all know that wetlands can cause additional expense for the village in order to maintain them in the configuration that sometimes developers agree to do. So as a consequence, the current language proposed in that section 4.1 of agenda item 9B should be stricken, and it should be replaced with some language which Lexington has had an opportunity to review. And it is my understanding that they've agreed to it. And it illustrates what I would characterize as the degree of responsibility they look to in these kinds of circumstances, which is very positive. So we would have subparagraphs A through E now of that section, and I'll try to summarize them without reading the actual language. The first thing is that the ownership of Outlot E will be established in perpetuity. which means that it will be established for the long run. It's almost as if there's a permanent easement over the property. So the village is ensured that it will not have the financial responsibility to restore or to maintain that wetland after restoration. The second thing is that wetland will be restored and maintained to satisfy established wetland standards in an amendment to the annexation agreement for the property, which will be forthcoming later. And the wetland standards will be established by and maintained as directed by the village. So the village will be proactive in that. When we get to that point, there'll be discussion, I'm sure, between Lexington and the village about what those standards should be under the circumstances. And they will bring some type of expertise to bear in performing that analysis and providing a recommendation to the board. It also provides that if a homeowners association becomes the owner of Outlot E, and keep in mind that that would only be with the permission of the village board, that they will provide a what's called a backup special service area to make sure that taxes are collected to maintain that property. Unfortunately, we've had some experience in the village where we've had developers on very small developments agree to establish homeowners associations for that purpose, and then they never establish the homeowners association. So when you go back to the homeowners and say, you need to put up some money to fix this wetland, you get a stare and a blank stare saying, what are you talking about? So in this particular case, we're going to make sure that if the homeowners association ultimately is the entity that becomes the responsible party for the wetland, that the village will be able to impose there's some, what I would characterize as challenge associated with that, because we'll be doing that very early on, because we don't want an SSA that's subject to challenge under the 30-day rule for the state statute. Because the owner will be Lexington in that first short period of time, or that, I don't know how long it'll be, but that will get established at that point. And the challenges will be trying to establish the numbers for the SSA. But it can be done, and it has been done, and it has become what I'd characterize as a more common development tool in these types of scenarios. The amount of the SSA fees will be consistent with state law with regard to how they are established. And in the first instance, from the village's standpoint, they may be established by the types of maintenance that an independent wetlands engineer recommends to the village, and then may be set by the village as part of the process as we work through the amendment to the annexation agreement. Finally, and this is the most significant thing, is if for some reason the village and the developer cannot reach agreement when we get to the annexation agreement to accomplish those things, essentially absolving the village of the responsibility for the financial costs associated with the maintenance of the wetland. All of these ordinances, all of these resolutions, and all of the rezoning will become null and void, and the property will revert to the zoning that exists now. So that gives the village what I would characterize as a significant amount of negotiating authority, number one. And number two, again, and I think this is very important, it's, in my opinion, the fact that Lexington is willing to agree to these conditions is an illustration that they are willing to work with the village in coming up with a reasonable solution to dealing with those wetland issues. So I'm recommending that if you go forward with this, strike the current paragraph 1 under section 4. And I have specific language in a memorandum that Jason has, Karen has, and that Lexington has, that we would then carry it into the agreement. Thank you. Any questions?
So then, Jim, when I get to making the motion, I will simply say as amended according to the village attorney. Is that sufficient?
That would be adequate, Bruce.
Thank you, sir. So with nothing else, I'd like to make a motion to pass an ordinance granting a special use permit for row house dwellings, a special use permit for planned unit development, PUD, and PUD deviations as amended by the village attorney.
Thank you very much, Trustee Berkshire. And we have a second from Trustee Trejo. So the floor is open for discussion. So any questions for Jim regarding that language or about the special use permit as outlined in the agenda packet today? All right, seeing none, then Madam Clerk, can I have a roll call?
Trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
trustee Trejo,
Aye.
trustee Lanisa,
Aye.
trustee Perkowski,
Aye.
and trustee Domke.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Thank you. And so I would like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving a preliminary plat of subdivision for the Timberleaf subdivision.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, trustee Trejo. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, could I have a roll call?
Trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
trustee Trejo,
Aye.
trustee Perkowski,
Aye.
trustee Domke,
Aye.
and trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
And that motion carries.
That is it from community development.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Under administration, we do not have anything tonight. Fire and police as well. Public Works, trustee Domke.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the purchase of a 2022 Ford Transit Connect van from Friendly Ford of Roselle in the amount of $34,443.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Trejo. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
I just wanted to
Oh.
make one statement, David. Just, I talked to Karen too, and the resale value of the old van is $3,000 to $5,000, which would make, even though it's a bit over budget, the sale of the other vehicle will make it on budget, more than likely.
Great, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Trustee Domke,
Aye.
trustee Trejo,
Aye.
trustee Lanisa,
Aye.
trustee Perkowski,
Aye.
trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
And that motion carries. Anything else tonight, trustee Domke?
No, David, not tonight.
All right, then we'll move to finance, trustee Lanisa.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the accounts payable list that is for May 24th of 2021 in the amount of $860,769.68.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Trejo. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a roll call. Madam Clerk?
Trustee Lanisa,
Aye.
trustee Trejo,
Aye.
trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
trustee Domke,
Aye.
and trustee Perkowski.
Aye.
And that motion carries. Anything else tonight?
We wanted to say thank you before we leave.
Absolutely. I was just about to give you an out before we move to new business. Thank you so much for coming. We continue to look forward to working together closely.
Yeah, we do too. Thank you very much.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
All right, we'll move to new business. So all these items are for discussion. No final action is anticipated. Our first one is discussions regarding the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. So Brian and Karen, you have the floor.
All right, I was gonna share my screen, but it looks like I don't have the permission right now. But to start, I just wanted to provide a little bit of background on the issue regarding recreational cannabis, as we have new board members, and I thought it'd be a good idea to get them up to speed on the landscape of the issue and kind of how we've gotten from previous board action to now. So, as you know, the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act was put into law and made effective January 1 of 2020. And the previous board adopted an ordinance which prohibited adult use cannabis businesses as defined by law in all zoning districts within the village. And a part of that ordinance entailed a moratorium to bring back forth the issue originally in December of 2020, as the issue was brand new and the board wanted to see how this all had played out in other communities that were considering adopting or prohibiting these businesses from operating within their municipalities. So with that, the board then chose to push the moratorium to June of this year, to the end of June of this year, primarily for two questions to be put on the April 6th ballot for referendum. And those questions were primarily in regards to, one, the retail sale of recreational cannabis, and two, all other businesses as defined. So that would be craft growers, cultivation centers, transporters, and infusers. So my memo highlights the results of that referenda, which showed that public support rests on both questions as a positive outcome, but primarily the retail sale kind of scoring right around 5 points higher than the other businesses. So in regards to the totality of the issue in itself and where we stand with dispensaries and other businesses in Illinois and surrounding communities, I'll see if I can share my screen now. All right. So you should be able to see what's in front of you is a map of local dispensary locations that are in surrounding communities that have adopted zoning ordinances that would allow for the use in their municipalities. So as it currently stands, there's 123 adult use dispensary organization licenses in Illinois and 21 cultivation licenses. Now, the state itself was originally set to slate an additional 75 dispensary licenses out in May of last year, but they stopped that lottery process due to social equity concerns. So long story short with that, they're expected to not only finish the first lottery of 75 additional dispensary licenses by the end of this year, but also to have an additional 110 dispensary licenses out by the end of the year. And that includes 35, particularly for social equity businesses that have been underrepresented throughout the entire process. So this kind of shows the market gap that currently exists within Roselle. We chose this drive time spot here as the main corridor that we would consider most likely a dispensary, the demand most likely being there just because it's high visibility on our Lake Street corridor right next to the Gary intersection. I did include a medical cannabis location as well, just because early approval licensing does allow for medicinal dispensaries to also sell retail adult use cannabis if they so choose as a second location. So moving on, so beyond just the state revenue aspect, which I pulled up a report here that actually includes the latest month, but you can see that total sales in the state have been increasing steadily since the law was adopted. And specifically in 2021, we've seen enormous amounts of cannabis items that have been sold that have been subject to state and local taxes. So Roselle has an option as a municipality to enact a local cannabis retailer's occupation tax, which is in addition to the typical 1% sales tax, in increments of 0.25% up to 3%. My memo kind of highlights the filing date and effective date and the disbursement dates if the board chooses to levy that tax. But we do currently receive on average about $2,000 a month from the state in regards to a use tax that gets distributed on a per capita basis that's meant for police research and training programs. So what this discussion is primarily about is to get board direction on two main concerns. The first being the zoning implications of the issue itself, and to move this to planning and zoning with direction from the board to conduct public hearings necessary to make zoning ordinance amendments. And we would do that with a focus on the dispensary being the most desirable business type based on the local sales tax implications and the fact that the licensing process itself has created a higher demand for that type of business use and just where Roselle sits in the current market. So we base that off of the results, obviously, of the referenda. That retail use was received the most by the public, but we also understand that the Planning and Zoning Commission can utilize the public hearing process and receive public input necessary to make those recommendations and bring it back to the board for potential final action. So the second direction that we're looking for is primarily the reason of the first, and that is to extend the current moratorium that prohibits all cannabis-related businesses just through the end of September. So that gives staff ample time and the Planning and Zoning Commission ample time to conduct those public hearings and get the public feedback, and then bring forth those recommendations back to the board prior to the filing deadline of the local retailers occupation tax that would need to be filed before the beginning of October. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to the board for deliberation, and Karen and I are both prepared to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Brian. Can you stop sharing your screen so I can see everyone again?
Yes.
And thank you again for providing this memo. I think I found it helpful just to revisit the topic. And I think also for those who weren't necessarily there for our debates prior, it helps level set the conversation. I think, just my personal opinion, using the Planning and Zoning Commission helps us just continue to get more public input. So it's not just being done at our level. And I think obviously the board has the authority and the ability to direct them or provide them feedback of what we would specifically hope to see in any final ordinance. So with that being said, I'd open up the floor for any questions or debate on the idea of passing this to Planning and Zoning to discuss and put forward a recommendation to the board for final action. So Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, I mean, to Brian's point earlier, it's clear that the referendums have passed in both instances. In terms of the location of the dispensary, I mean, from my point of view, I was thinking more towards the industrial area, so off of Central and potentially off of Medina Road over in kind of in the Itasca border. With regard to the taxes, I would say that, I think we should go to the 3%. But yeah, definitely interested in hearing more public feedback. And then the only other thing I would say is, I know we're saying we're starting with the first piece of this now, but I do think we need to have the cultivation as a fast follow. I mean, again, we all sort of aligned with the last board that, hey, whatever the public says, we'll take action on. So I do think that we need to get that, get the ball rolling on that as well for the cultivation piece of it.
Trustee Berkshire.
So a couple of things. First, I would agree that we should move this out to September so that this way it gives everyone ample time, so it doesn't appear that we're trying to rush through it just to get us to make sure we hit that June date. So moving that to September is ideal. And then secondly, I do also agree that it should be the zoning board that should go through this and review and understand and what kind of and where the zoning changes should be. And then I too was also thinking that it would have been more in that industrial area. However, as time has passed, and I have now seen where these places are in Addison, in Schaumburg, and the like, they are professional businesses. They are, what I'll say, discreet in terms of either their naming or even in their signage, such that it would prove beneficial on a corridor such as Lake Street. Because of the fact that they're looking for that higher traffic. So I'm not as adverse to having it in a more visible location based on what I have seen in these other villages and these establishments.
Thank you, Bruce. Any other comments or questions? Trustee Domke?
Yeah, I would like to just caution that, or first I would like to certainly think that by getting more feedback would be important, because basically only 15% of the registered voters voted in the election for this referendum. So there might be a lot of people that missed the opportunity to voice their concerns. So certainly waiting till September gives us ample time to let them get involved, even though they did not vote. The other thing I wanted to caution is, being from a business background as I am, in a business, there's sometimes you do not add a product to your product line because it will take away some of the sales of your existing product lines. So I want to caution that even though you see nothing but dollar signs on the opportunity to get into the cannabis business, I think you should pay very much attention to business owners in Roselle, and they may not live in Roselle. So hopefully they can have a say between June and September, because I would hate to have anything like this put into Roselle where it would wreck the mojo we've got going right now with businesses seeking to come here for many reasons, and almost none of them have anything to do with a cannabis shop. So please keep that in mind. It's not all dollars and cents in the world. And in my opinion, I'd rather have a good new steakhouse than a cannabis shop. I think the tax revenue from a good steakhouse, even though 1913's got some pretty good steaks, I would still like to see other business as opposed to this. And not being in the business of cannabis can maybe also be a positive. So just keep those things in mind. I don't know if I'm going to be a majority in that attitude, but I just want you to look at the thing from the long view.
Any other discussion or comments? Trustee Trejo?
Oh, and just to follow up on Bruce's initial thing, I'm totally in alignment with pushing it to extending the moratorium till September.
All right, thank you. Tom or Cheryl, anything else that you want to add?
Oh, I agree to going through, pushing out through September also, just so that, being new, that I'd have some time to see all the ins and outs of, going either way with this.
Great. Tom?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I also agree pushing it out to gather more information.
Perfect. So, I think staff, hopefully you have enough direction there. It sounds like for our next meeting, let's go ahead and have something up so we can push out the moratorium as you've proposed. And then, just share some of the feedback that, the board has provided as far as openness to, where they situate this in the code. I think my big thing, I'd like to echo what Bruce said. I think, these businesses aren't necessarily, they don't look like other adult uses that you see in times, and they don't draw as much outside and negative attention to them from a building perspective. And I think as long as keeping corridors like Main Street, I think with the character is important, whereas there's other that are more commercially focused that I think this can probably fit in well if you look at the models in Schaumburg and whatnot. So thank you so much for the report today.
All right.
And then next on our new business agenda is discussion regarding the purchasing policy review and update. So Tom, I'll throw it over to you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you tonight is an update to the village's purchasing policy. The policy was last revised in 2009, and management staff has been working on this since 2018. We were prepared to present this last spring until COVID put a hold on everything, and revisions were needed to help clarify some sections, add language required by GATA, which is the Grant Accountability and Transparency Act of the state, and to address other changes made by the state. So in the memo, we've listed the changes, but I'll read through them really briefly for everybody. We expanded some policies and procedures within Section 1 to ensure the integrity of the purchasing process and foster public confidence in the use of public monies. We expanded the policies and procedures within Section 2. And part of it was consolidating the purchasing authority tables into a separate section, a separate exhibit or section, making it easier to update in future years. So sometimes we like to update those tables, but not necessarily the policy itself. So that helped us. That would help us achieve that. Purchasing authority distinction between budgeted and unbudgeted items were removed, making the purchasing process more efficient. We revised the village administrator purchasing authority to $24,999 from $9,999. The state of Illinois increased the minimum public works cost to require competitive bidding at $25,000. So this change will keep the village policy aligned with state statute, but will still require obtaining multiple quotes for any purchase under the $25,000. The purchase order requirement was increased from $500 to $1,000, more of an internal housekeeping item for finance. The RFP, RFQ process section was expanded in an effort to provide increased explanation and detail to staff. The purchasing card program policy was incorporated into the purchasing policy When the purchasing card program was adopted several years ago, it was a standalone policy. It was easier to combine those two into one policy and include the table and just have it as one. And then finally, the definition of emergency purchases was updated, and the amount required for village board approval was increased to 25,000, again to align with the recommended village administrator's authority. And that's all the changes, or most of the changes within there, the major ones. And I'd be happy to answer any questions from the board.
And I'd also just like to thank the Finance Planning Committee. I know you guys were involved in providing feedback, so thank you for that additional work, Bruce and Lee. So, Trustee Berkshire.
So just want to reiterate something we did talk through, and that is just because an approval limit is only a certain number of individuals, but if the change order or something should incur that it would go to that next level, that would mean that it would have to go through that approval level of that next level. Meaning if the board had to get into, if it was something below the 25,000 and it didn't require board approval, but a change order brought it to being above that, the whole thing would have to come through and then be reapproved through the board at that point, because the total amount is greater than the value of that threshold. So that was key for us to incorporate.
Thank you. Any other discussion points or questions? Trustee Domke?
Yeah, this really looks good. It's exactly how it used to be when I was working for the last company I was with. It's really it's just perfect as far as I could see. I just wanted to make mention. I asked this on this morning. The acting administrator qualifies as administrator, right, Jim?
Yes.
And then anytime I see the word credit cards, it dawns on me to ask a question. I don't know what our policy is with the credit cards or our contract, but does it have awards for usage, such as airplane mileage or anything? Is that, and any of that put into a gift thing for the village or anything?
These cards do not have any rewards, points or miles or anything like that. There are levels that we can reach where the village would receive rebates on an annual basis. But I believe that's 100,000 or 250,000 per annual spend. And we haven't reached that level yet.
And we don't hit that. And that would go back to the village, not to the individual card holder.
That'd be correct. It's on a total basis.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
Direction to move forward.
Perfect. Any disagreement with that? Speak now, forever hold your peace. All right, we'll see it on the next agenda then. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
And again, thank you to the Finance Planning Committee again for collaborating on that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so then we do have our last village board public comment section, if in case there's anyone in the public that has been hanging on and had any thoughts regarding our new business items. So if you do, please raise your hand using the lovely Zoom reaction option. Seeing none, does anyone have other business today? Seeing none, is there, and this is where I'm going to ask for direction. We're going to first open the executive session and then adjourn this meeting, correct, Jim?
You have to have a motion to go into executive session, and then you can open the executive, or you can do executive session and close this meeting out before you.
I'll make a motion to convene an executive session.
Second the motion.
Thank you.
The purpose of the executive session is to discuss collective bargaining regarding part-time firefighters.
Could I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
And Trustee Domke.
Aye.
And that
And the
motion.
records, I'm sorry, in the records, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dave, you're first.
All
Sorry.
right, I was going to say that motion carries. Do not leave for the next meeting yet. Can I get a motion to adjourn
So
the
moved.
regular meeting? Thank you, Trustee Trejo. Do I have a second?
Second.
And no final action is anticipated.
Thank you. And I think Trustee Pierkowski provided the second. So roll call on the adjournment, and then we'll see you on the other Zoom.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
Trustee Domke,
Aye.
trustee Lanisa,
Aye.
trustee Berkshire.
Yes.